Morning, good morning, good morning. Happy Monday. I hope everybody is starting their day well, ready for a great new week, is starting their day off with prayer and positivity and whatever it is that you do to get your day kick started. I hope your day is starting well. Good morning. Thank you for joining me. If this is your first time here, my name is Jalia Pettis, and throughout the month of August, I have been doing a series of Instagram lives, and this is episode 3. So this is the third one, and I still have a few more to go. So I'm very excited to bring on this young lady. Her name is Titeanya Rodriguez. She's the founder of Womxnography, and I'm gonna let her give you her intro. But to kind of just recap really quick, the premise behind all of this is I wanted to invite other creative entrepreneurs that are Black business owners or people of color, and just kind of allow them to share in their experiences. This is not a live where we're just bashing, oh my gosh, you need to do this, that, or the other for me. This is really shedding a light on what our experiences have been as creative entrepreneurs, and how we've kind of overcome. And I say our because I know for me, it has been a journey. Leaving corporate America to be, an entrepreneur is something that is not for the faint of heart by any means. So I am going to ask her way we can get this conversation going, because it's going to be good. It's going to be good. Good morning.
Hey, I wasn't sure how the lighting would be. I mean, my light's on and then the window, but
I look, I got my ring light, which is making me look extra crispy today. I'm looking very crispy white. And then I got my window, and then I got my house light. So you're good. It's fine. It's totally fine. Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well. So before we jump in, I need to say this so that everybody can hear it. Please, if you saw me post and there was a wrong bio, there was the incorrect date or time, please, please, please know that that was not intentional or to confuse anybody. So what I have been doing with these lives is, after we finish them, not only are they being saved in my series folder here on Instagram, but I'm downloading them and then uploading them to my YouTube channel. That way they can live forever.
Yeah.
So it will have all of the information. It will have all of Tatiana's information with her website, so that you know how to get to her if you ever need her for any type of project. So far we've spoken to a photographer, we've spoken to a hairstylist and makeup artist, and now we give you this lovely young lady. So tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So my name is Titeanya. I have a production company called Womxnography. I'm a writer, producer. I directed out of necessity, but I don't really advertise that, but I have done that. Yeah, I'm from originally Ohio, but I was born in Puerto Rico, and I now live in Los Angeles, California. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it to sum it up.
So what made you decide to start your business? What was the prompt behind that?
Well, basically, I moved out to LA when I was 18. I'm 27 now, so I've been out here almost 10 years in November. And during that time, I mean, like most people, you're always looking for that representation of yourself, and then you ask yourself, like, oh, like, am I even qualified to do that? Because I also dropped out of high school to move out here, and I did that because I could not pass math. I was like diagnosed super late with dyslexia. So letters and numbers have always been a struggle for me.
Okay.
But at that point, I was like, I'm not an engineer. I don't need this. Like, as long as I know how to count my money, like the very basics, I don't need algebra 1. And that was the thing that was holding me back from graduation. So I moved out here when I was 18. I moved out here originally actually to work in front of the camera, because I did start in modeling and acting when I was 13, 12 years old in Ohio. So I moved out here because I was supposed to be represented as an actor, but got swindled into helping her run her business, which just so happened to be like talent management, which kind of goes hand in hand with producing because it's really all just personality management and figuring out how to either get opportunities for your clients or how to market and sell a film or how to get money for your film or project, whatever the case may be. But I started in 2020, like most people, the world ended. So it was like figuring out what am I going to do with this government coin? And between trying to, get my own place, which I did do, I also started Womxnography. It wasn't really a business though in my head at the time. It was more so just figuring out how to safely create and get people outside. Because I'm not an influencer. I work with a lot of them, but I wasn't about to be TikToking around and doing all that. So I started Womxnography, and I started it because there is still not enough, but there was definitely not as many, I'd say, women of color out there producing on like the scale we kind of see a bit more even today. And I knew that there were stories that needed to be told within our community and within this space. So of like women of color, Black women, queer women, et cetera, et cetera. I'm also at like the intersection of sports. So I work with a lot of people in women's basketball specifically, but also in the soccer space. So I really was seeing how different people, regardless of what industry you're in, we're all kind of connected by this, idea that there's not enough opportunity, but there's just not enough people seeing us for who we are and giving us those opportunities. So I wanted to be kind of a solution to that instead of, I guess, being out there begging and asking for opportunities, especially being a high school dropout. I had already finessed my way into certain things, but it was like I wasn't going to be working at CAA or Warner Brothers without, certain qualifications. So
Right.
I kind of like my own opportunity.
Creating your own opportunities. I feel like that is the story of my life. Like, we are, and I say we because I associate myself with like-minded individuals. So we are the type of people that have to just get up every day and go after it. We have to come up with a plan and make the plan work. Like, and then on top of that, we have to have a plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Like, we have to have so many other things. So, like, I have found that I feel like I've seen that more with other men and women of color than I have with other individuals overall. So it's almost like it's been historically indoctrinated into our minds that we always have to have a plan. Because if you don't have a plan, you don't want your booty out. They would say ass out back in the day, but they don't want you out there. So like you want to really make sure that you have a plan. So when I don't have a plan, that bothers me. That bothers me to my core. So why do you think that is? Like what has historically been what you've seen?
Definitely the same thing, and that's what held me back. Like I kind of was told to go out on my own, like by God, the universe, whatever people want to call it. I knew that when I moved out here, and after a couple of years working under someone, I could already kind of see what needed to be done, but it was just imposter syndrome. I think it's a big part of it, but also you just feel like there's going to be somebody better that can do it. And then I got to a point with the pandemic, a lot of time to just sit and think because I've been like, I hustle so much, still to this day, but even more then. I had like 2 jobs. I would open, Universal Studios Hollywood, like at 8 a.m., then go work at a movie theater at night. And then like anytime I could work on my own stuff and just redo that cycle for years. So when the pandemic happened, it gave me a lot of time to just sit and think. And I was like, I don't know where I wanted to be at the time, but also it's like, George Floyd was murdered, Breonna Taylor was murdered. It was like these constant reminders of how precious time is and how waiting, like you don't always have control over your own life. Unfortunately, especially for people of color. So I wanted to be able to know, at least, you know, God forbid something like that happen, but know as part of my legacy that I could leave something or have done something beyond just working for somebody and trying to advocate every day for people who look like me. So that kind of outweighed not just the imposter syndrome, but that kind of outweighed just like the fear itself. And it's not like even what three years in it that I don't have that. It's just more so like I was listening to a sports agent do an interview and talk, but it's more so just like this is kind of a necessity for most of us. Like we need to create for ourselves and create with us in mind, because otherwise, like, we would probably all like you know be very unhappy. But on top of that, like the world would just be a worse place than what it is. As dramatic as that might sound, some people, that's how I look at it. It's because we keep seeing these same stories told over and over again as though we don't exist, and just progressively get worse, unfortunately. I mean, in LA, we have the WGA strike, we have the SAG strike, you know, hotel workers are on strike. I don't even know who else is on strike. It depends on what part of town I'm in. And if you walk down the street, you can just see whoever's on strike. And that in itself, I feel like is a testimony to the fact that real change needs to happen, which I know we keep saying. MLK was saying it. Malcolm X was saying it. Different fight. From the standpoint of our stories, I feel like that's the connecting factor, though. It's just our existence and our humanity and our livelihoods. So for me, I mean, getting up and having to figure it out every day can be daunting and exhausting. It's like, but also I'm someone who gets bored very easily. So I look at it as also kind of like a blessing, because I'm like, I could easily probably make, you know, a bit more a year at McDonald's, but I'd be miserable. I would hate everything. I wouldn't care about this, like, you know, at all. But then on the other side of it, it's like when you get that one message or that one like, or you see like someone really like giving you your flowers in whatever way that looks like, whether passing you by, like you're on your way to work, and you might think I just threw this on, but someone's like, you look amazing, like where are you headed? Or like, because I take the train, they're like, you look like a creative. And I just think to myself, like, what does that even mean? One, but two, at the same time, I just threw this on. But it's just like something about your aura and who you are is kind of being you know, reaffirmed in that moment. And I think that's also just a constant reminder of kind of to keep going, even when you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel, especially in like the strike era and pandemic era still, I guess, in a way we're still in.
Yeah. So now with the strike, let's talk about that a little bit. So I know for me, I'm based in Arizona, but I am feeling it in such a I have to really, I mentioned this yesterday when I did the live. I believe that like life and death is in the power of the tongue. So I'm very careful about what I say about myself, about my kids, about my work, about my career, about the people that are connected to me. And this strike has really tested all of that. You know what I mean? Like it has been nothing. Like there has been the bookings, they have dried all the way up. And I'm in Arizona. So like with you being there, like what, and you've been on the front lines with these strikes. And I even heard, gosh, it must have been the other day, I heard something about there was an actress that said that there was a show that she was on and it was like replaying, and the check that she got sent was like less than $1,000. I'm like, yeah, good Lord. So can you talk to us a little bit about that? Like, what are you working on, since one, you're right there in it at the strike, and then what are people saying at the strike? Because I know you've been talking to tons of people.
Yeah, so well, for one, I'm not in any unions, which I guess, you know, it's a double-edged sword, because if you want to get anywhere in Hollywood, you have to be in the union at some point, which comes with those bigger opportunities with these studios and networks. But at the same time, they don't play fair, and they never really have, to be quite honest. I just think at this point, people are like boiled over from all the racial injustice and all these other things. Like we're in a recession too. Things keep increasing everywhere, not just LA, but literally everywhere. We just feel it more in places like LA and New York, I think. But at the same time, for myself, I'm an independent, so there's rules that are in place where we can't, like, we make something right now, we can't go sell it to Warner, or majority of us would be banned from the WGA or potentially SAG in the future from joining, because they call that like scaving, which is basically like you're trying to work with the people who aren't trying to pay the fair wages to the people who are right now striking for fair wages.
Okay.
But at the time for me, I have been creating during this time. The thing is I started in docu, so nobody cares about us. So we don't have a union. We don't have protections. You know, people say there's not a lot of money in docu, yet we see, you know, Shooting Stars is a biopic, which is a form of docu that LeBron did, and Steph Curry just worked with Ryan Coogler's company and did, you know, the Underrated docu. All those things make money, obviously, with who's a part of them. Otherwise, they wouldn't do them. But two, it's just, it depends on who you are. I think that was just another reminder there. It all depends on who you are. But for me, I mean, the struggle has always been this for me. So I haven't felt it from the standpoint of like people that are usually booked back to back to back. For me, it's like I'm trying to just reach out to these people, you know, and get money. So right now it's like we can't get money, but a lot of us have been utilizing, you know, our services in other ways, like going to go interview at the picket lines, or maybe figure out, you know, some story to tell during this time that's within docu, because that doesn't cross the picket line in any way, shape, or form. So it's really just been kind of playing with staying creative and staying optimistic while also being in solidarity, which I find to be a very interesting word, depending on what's going on in the world at the time, because it was the same back in 2020. But I mean, when it comes to the strike, I try to be mindful of what I say as well. But it's just going to be interesting to see, because I know the WGA just went back into talks after 100 days with the AMPTP, I think is their name, the Academy, regardless, to try to get this deal done. But yeah, I haven't had a drastic, I guess, impact with it because I'm independent. It's just if I want to work with SAG folks, majority of them, even if we got an interim agreement, because you can get interim agreements if you go to SAG, which is kind of a variation of a signatory that you would get if they weren't on strike, and they approve you, then you can work and you can use their actors. But a lot of actors have stated still wanting to be in solidarity. So yeah, it's just been really docu personally for me. A lot of other people have expressed similarly what you have said. But yeah, I think it's just, you know, an interesting situation with unfortunately no end in sight.
That's the scary part.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so when is this going to end? And it's interesting that you mentioned the docu portion versus, because I know that I've had a couple of people that have contacted me like for independent type things, and the budget has been so ridiculously like, I'm like, there's no way as much as I want to say yes, there's just no way. There's no way that I could say yes to that. Like, I would be doing myself a disservice at that point. So it's a double-edged sword, unfortunately. So, you know, it's nice that we have other skills that we can use during this time to kind of get us over the hump. But I am very hopeful that this will be coming to an end very soon. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. We will definitely see. So you're in LA now. You said Ohio, but originally from Puerto Rico. Do you think you will stay in LA? Do you have any plans of moving?
Yeah, I think I'll always have a home here. I would love to have either a home or a property at least in Puerto Rico where I could spend at least a decent amount of time in. It's just not, I mean, there's not a lot of opportunities out there. The film industry out there, it's very different. And just how they treat their people out there is very different than here. So opportunity wise, it's better here. But eventually I'd love to, be like based, I guess, probably differently. Um, and Puerto Rico is number one on my list just because it's not that far. But no, I don't think I'd always be in LA. I would always have a place here because this is where the most work is, and I don't think that's
Mhm.
gonna change in at least our lifetimes. But I'd always have a place here for sure.
Okay. So can you give us an example of a project without saying what it was, where you felt like your ethnicity came into play in a positive and then in a negative?
Well, so I work a lot with influencers in the digital space, which is the irony is the way that this industry, and I talk about like Hollywood as this industry portrays it, is that there's a lot of similarities, but there is very much.
Your sound just went out. Tatiana, can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Your sound went out. So you're gonna have to say that one more time.
Okay.
Right, start from the beginning, because you're just as you got ready to start talking, the sound went out.
Okay. Okay. So basically, I said I work in the influencer space a lot, and I work with a lot of digital content creators, influencers. And I think a lot of people, because of how Hollywood's portrayed it and how streaming has become really big, and a lot of these giants can do that. They can go just from traditional, into streaming with no problem.
Mm-hmm.
That people forget that they're running a business when they do this. So for me, what I've learned across the board, but definitely even with one recent project I did with an influencer that I had initially reached out to work with, um, is that a lot of folks are going to just use people of color still, which is not, it's not a surprise, but it's just disappointing, especially when you do the outreach and you just find out it's just not how they portray themselves, which happens a lot with
Okay.
anything, but it's the influencer space, that they're just going to use you as a diversity quota and then just try to keep it pushing. And for me, I just am to the point where I don't want to be used as that. And if I knew, ahead of time, it wouldn't have even been a thing where I would have gotten involved and invested into the project. And then it's like at the same time, an independent, a lot of people like to cut corners. And I learned early on that I do not want to be known as someone that does that, because I worked on sets where you just kind of know, like, you're going to risk the safety of
Yeah.
your crew.
Right.
And I just, that's never okay. We're not on a Mission Impossible film that's insured. Like, this is a small independent film. The project I'm speaking of, we also had water involved, like a pool. So it's like these corners you're cutting are life and death. And I know people probably felt I was being dramatic in like my positioning that was supposed to be a producer, but I also didn't feel like it was respected my positioning. So therefore, I'm not the producer when the director's overwriting everything I say.
Okay.
And then it being a situation where the director ended up investing into it because it was like a non-negotiable for me, in terms of some of these corners, like insurance. They were not going to have insurance in time. So it was like one of these things that they weren't going to tell folks about it, or they didn't want to. And then I basically said, I need to do this or I'm not going to invest in it. The director said that they were going to invest in it instead. I had already gotten two of my people involved with it. So I stuck around as long as I could because of the two people I gotten involved. But it was unfortunate from the standpoint that I knew that she wanted me there because of who I bought into it, because they wanted to work with that person. But at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, it just made me feel like I like it just made me feel like I was just a quota because the whole entire cast was white and all the I don't want to say the help, but the crew were people of color.
Okay.
I don't think that she subconsciously necessarily thought to herself to do that, but I also stated at the beginning of the project that I wanted to make sure that we did involve as many people of color as we could on the front side, as like
Mm-hmm.
we know people on the back side, like all of us
Right.
know that, and she agreed to that. But then when it came down to auditioning, it was like nobody was good enough but these people who just also happened to be white with like blonde hair, blue eyes. Some of them weren't even in LA, they were like in New York. So that's another thing too, because it's independent. I'm like thinking about budget. Like I think to myself, if we have $20,000, that doesn't mean we have $20,000 to just blow up on production. What
Right.
about post? What about emergency rainy day? You just never know
Yep.
what's gonna happen. And it was like all the money was just for production. They were not planning for posts at all. And to this very day, the project was in May. There's been no plan for posts. So it's like, is
Oh,
this project going to come
oh
out? When is it going to
wow.
come out? Yeah. And so it's just, and I think to myself, like, I have run into this, and depending on the different influencer and how they, some of them have egos that it's not even worth getting into. This was one of them, but other ones, like if you tell them, like they'll like really be like, oh, okay, so how are we supposed to do it? Because like they just don't understand. Like they're usually on their own. Even if they have a team, that team's just eating off them. So it's not like their team is going to know what they're doing. Because it also depends.
Mhm.
Everybody these days calls themselves an agent or a manager, and most of them don't even know how to be that.
Right.
So, which is a whole
Right.
separate thing and issue that I just
Yes.
so many thoughts on, because a lot of these people, even the big ones, are just talent collectors. And
Yep.
I mean, you're just eating off your person. 30% gone. You didn't do anything. They got them that job. So it's
Hmm.
disappointing. But my lesson in that has just been, I'm no, well, one, I just am not going to reach out to certain people where it's just like, even if my gut at one point during a conversation we had, even before we got that deep into it, my gut was like, this is sounding like it may not go as well. And I still just was optimistic. And that's why now I'm just like, a few months later, I look back like, all right, that's a lesson learned. I'm glad I learned it 3 years in, and not, maybe 10 or 15 years in, where it
Hmm.
could have been a bigger thing, a bigger company involved. And, I just don't cut corners. That's my moral to the story. I just don't cut corners. Like, no.
That's a good thing. I mean, I learned a very hard lesson this year. This year, at the beginning of the year, some kind of similar, had that gut feeling that I shouldn't have said yes, and I committed, and like you, brought in a group of people, and then once I've committed myself and all of these people, you know, the dookie hit the fan, and it's like, oh my gosh, how can I get out of this? And then once it hits the fan, it's like, you're not paying people on time. And, people that don't do this full time like me, like they took off to come and be a part of this project. So they lost money. And now, 2 months has gone by, 3 months has gone by. It's like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? Like, so yes, following your gut, man, you you can never go wrong. You can never go wrong
And,
with it.
and net 30 is a scam, y'all. So don't. Net 30 is, I've had to learn that, because I will say early on I acclimated that to my business, because that's what I was used to. I'm working these independent jobs. They just tell me they'll pay me in 30 days. That's fine. But then I started thinking, why are we waiting like 30 days? Like, you should already have this plan, like, and ready to go. So I know a lot of people still do that. I don't do that anymore. Like we do, depending on the talent, depending on, if they have a team or not, because some people too, like, because now I have lawyers and stuff now at different companies, so they work with different talent and stuff like that. So for example, my one lawyer, she reps Kelly Rowland and Amanda Steinberg, a few other people. She always says to me, and she says to these other people, even though obviously they're big names, they've had issues getting their money from people before, where they'll do an independent project, even as these people. So then it's like they've learned to tell their clients and have in their contracts, okay, give us at least half up front. And then we, obviously when they get into production and stuff like that, then they're supposed to be paid weekly. And then they should be getting like their final check within that last day on set, or, some kind of reasonable time frame, but not net 30. And then it's like, if you do these lower tiers, my lawyer always says, like, girl, you should just be able to get your money up front. Depending on your positioning, you should be able to get your money up front, and have that
Oh my
contract.
God.
Like, yeah, that's how my lawyers have been working and have advised me. And for me, because I am the one providing the jobs, I work within reason. But I haven't demanded something like that. So I don't have a testimony today to say that's worked out for me. But that's been what my attorneys have said. And I have learned, because there are jobs I've gone to and I still am waiting to be paid for some of them. And it's like the other thing too that, you know, we talk about is it worth suing them? Because small claims, you know, is a funny thing, at least in California.
Right.
I don't know if it's everywhere, but it's a
Right.
funny thing. The burden of proof, you know, works in your
Mm-hmm.
or against, and it's really just one judge making a decision, and it's the best story regardless of the actual facts sometimes.
Right.
And so,
Right.
like, am I going to try to, you know, sue them, or if I'm going to just trust I'm going to get this money? But for me, we always pay either the last day, or, you know, if I work with the team before and I trust they're going to show up, because that's always my issue. You know, I run this person a bag and then they go MIA. What am I going to do? Like, what am I going to do?
Right.
To be honest,
Yep.
I don't think that's going to happen. But at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
like, desperate times, it's gotten dicier nowadays. But we
Yes.
always try to give the last check, you know, that last day, or, you know, within reason of it is
Mm-hmm.
how, you know, we've been working. And within Docu too, it hasn't been a problem. I've been paying my team as we go with whatever we're doing in Docu, because there
That's
are no
great.
protections. Yeah, like literally at the end of the day,
That's
like,
really good.
I'm just like, here you go, like whatever the case
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
can. So, but it's been interesting for sure, the indie versus whatever. Like, you know, if I ever get a huge job with Warner or something, I'm sure I'm going to be blown, because I've heard the horror stories even within that of these big companies having issues paying folks. You know, I had some friends on, what was it, rap shit that were flabbergasted by, you know, they call it Issa Rae. I like to say HBO, because I'm like, you know, we're saying these people's names like Issa Rae, or if there's an
Right.
issue with the Shy, well, Selena Waithe, but they don't own their content, y'all. This is
Right.
this
Right.
network using
That's
their name
true.
in the network. I'm not going to try to blame another person who I'm sure would be flabbergasted, but be like, my hands are tied, y'all. Like, unfortunately,
Mm-hmm.
it's Showtime, it's HBO, whoever.
I read something. I'm not sure if you've heard this, so you can let me know. But I had read something a couple of months back where in California they were going, if you were, you know, a production below the line type individual, they were making it mandatory that you be paid with no later than the 30 days. Have you heard about that? Okay.
Yeah, that's something that, like, that's something that's always supposed to have been in play, was my understanding, but they were trying to better enforce it with the certain things and times going on. Because sometimes people still put in the contracts 30, 60, 90, which I have seen that, not for myself, because I would have I would have been looking like, we need to circle one of these options. I need
Right.
to know. But like, or I would have just crossed that out. I like was
Right.
listening to Samuel Jackson talk about AI back when he signed with the Avengers. I don't know if you've seen that video, or it was like a report he did with the Hollywood Reporter, and he was like, anytime he had gotten a contract that said, like, using his, you know, name, image, likeness scan in perpetuity, he'd cross that out and then send it back to the studio. And I was like, that's what I would do, because at the end of the day, it was a direct quote.
Wow.
He's like, you know, nowadays, because we're in the strike era, people are like flabbergasted. They want to pay you $250 as a background actor, scan you in, and then use your NIL in perpetuity. But he's like, Disney been doing this since, you know, Avengers. So
Wow.
this is new. Like, but he's been scratching it out since Avengers. So it's like that, like, he's basically was like, you know, that's not how he rolls. I guess he can do that because he's Samuel L. But
Right.
I also thought to myself after that, it's like, this goes back to the education and why I tell people you don't always need an agent or manager, but I do think everyone needs a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
And at least that lawyer understands that sector, because that's a whole nother issue. It's the same with agents and managers. You know, some lawyers just think they can just do it all, and, you know, it
Yeah.
shows. But others, it's like they're gonna know this AI thing is smelling real funny. I mean, going back to even what you said at the beginning with the these checks, that girl got 1,000. I mean, Kendrick Sampson from Insecure, who plays Nathan, posted his. He was getting pennies. So shout out to girl who got, it was like 0.1, 0.5. point
Mhm.
two.
What?
Yeah.
Oh
And
my
me,
gosh.
one of my friends interviewed him when they were at the WB lot, like, what was it? What month is it? August? It was like mid or early July. And another one of the Insecure stars was there whose name escapes me. But they were like saying, like, yeah, it's always been like that for them. And they were always like, well, like, well, what are we supposed to do? And it's like, this was in their contracts. And it's really just telling, even in those moments, how people either they trusted their team or didn't read them themselves. And then thirdly, it's like, what are you going to do? Not do Insecure? Like, and so, I mean, the importance of the strike is very much there. But I think on the other side is like, it's been 100 days. It's like, I think it's the second longest or the longest strike in WGA history, about to be the longest strike in WGA history. And they're still talking about not changing AI. And then WGA, I believe, added healthcare, which I thought was crazy that wasn't there at the
Right,
beginning. But
right.
you know, we still in this. They still they're figuring it out amongst themselves. But for me, I'm just like, you know, while I was out there, I'm thinking to myself how we really all need to figure out how to. We're creatives first and foremost, you know, creatively figuring out how to not have to rely solely on Netflix to pay me my check, because I think
Right.
it was Sarah Silverman who made a whole video about she was upset about the interim agreements, and then they told her as SAG she was upset about the interim agreements because she's like, this kind of feels counterproductive, because it's like you're saying independence can work, but then we can't work with, you know, Netflix, whoever,
Hmm.
and then turning
Hmm.
projects or whatever to be in solidarity. And then I guess they had a conversation with her, the heads of SAG, and then she got back on and was just saying, like, at the end of the day, this is all performative and it's great and it's necessary, but we are, you know, basically walking around empty buildings advocating for our rights, and we still don't have an end in sight. And we still, you know, not everyone's a Tom Cruise
Yeah,
or any other
yeah,
celebrity that's able
yeah.
to, you know, drop 1 million into the, you know, funds, which is amazing, you know, to the Meryl Streeps and all them. So it's like we are like 100 days for SAG too, and they, you know, these unions have never cared about the writers. That's just a story history. You can just see it. They made a deal with WGA first, and then SAG, and you know, I mean not WGA, DGA first, and then WGA and SAG have been on strike. And DGA historically has always gotten the best deals too. Like, people can look this up. They've always gotten the best agreements because they do care about directors more.
Can
And it's
you say, for those that might not be clear, what each of those acronyms stands for?
yeah, so DGA is Directors Guild of America. So that's every pretty big director that you see on the Oscars and some other, you know, wants to do music videos and other things. They're in that union. SAG is the Screen Actors Guild of America. They are the Actors, Actresses Union. And then WGA is the Writers Guild. So really nothing can happen without the writers, but they're the ones that never get the good deals. But they always do give really decent deals to DGA, and even SAG. So what's interesting is just seeing how with this counter they gave to WGA that they haven't stated yet. On Friday, they gave the AMPTP gave the WGA a counter to what they'd been asking, which is not supposed to touch on AI, which is the biggest ask for everybody. But then
Okay.
also really touch on the residuals, which is also the biggest ask for everybody, because it's like, you know, another show that was talking about it was Switched at Birth and Walker Texas Ranger, old one with Chuck Norris. They're also only making $1, $5 pennies, and they, I mean, my mom watched this Walker Texas Ranger, and it's like I grew up watching Walker Texas Ranger, and I don't know what TV station it is anymore, but you can, any time of day in Ohio at least, you can flip to that channel and
That's
play it.
like Ion. That comes on like Ion. If you don't have, you know, if you ain't got cable, you can watch like all of the Ions and catch those shows. Wow.
Still only getting like 1, 5, 10, whatever dollars
Oh
to
my
watch.
gosh.
Switched Up Birth was another big one, and she was also posting her information too, and it wasn't that extravagant. And I was like, I don't even want to know about any of the rest of these shows, you know. Like, I know it's nothing crazy. But yeah, all that to say, it's going to be interesting what the deal is going to be. I think the deal regardless is going to be lesser than what they asked, because I mean, Bob has been running his mouth the entire time, notoriously the head of Walt Disney. He's always thought the ask has been ridiculous. And they even said, I don't know if anyone followed this, but he even said that they would wait till like all the people lost their homes and like we're really starved. No, it's a direct quote if you look up like CEO Bob's comments on the strikes. But then recently, like last week, he said he doesn't want people to die painfully. He just would rather them die more quickly, essentially. And he said this, like there's it's like this
What?
reporter reporting Deadline, like trades like that. So it's not made up, but this is the mentality of one CEO. So like imagine the rest of them who may not have said anything of this caliber, but I mean, they're in solidarity like we are. Like we're in solidarity because nothing's happened.
They're saying it. They're just not saying it to the press. They're saying it to one another at home or on the phone or via text message. That's sad. That's really, really, sad. That's really sad. Wow. So to kind of just wrap everything up a little bit, because this has been so good. So for any of you that are creatives, that are writers, that are directors, that are storytellers, that are producers, like she just dropped so much information for you all. Now, I know we briefly mentioned about Womxnography, and you mentioned the docuseries that you're kind of working on right now. Is that what you're going to continue to do as we kind of move through, you know, kind of seeing what's going to happen with the strike?
Yeah, so we have a docu-series. I'm in development on some sports series as well, with people who are basically solely in the sports sector. They're not in any union either. And then I work a bit in music video. I'm starting to get more in the music sector just because we also need music for all our projects, and I had like no connects in that area, so I'm like, well, might as well, because they're thriving right now. They don't have a union like SAG or anything like that that's really directly impacting them. They have their own issues, but nothing like that. But yeah, basically, we have been approved for certain projects for the SAG interims. We haven't really, I'd say, pursued those as heavily because we just have been following the different actors that we want to use, and we could tell it wouldn't benefit us to reach out because they're gonna wait this out, until they have a deal. And that's not an issue for us, but we want us to just be prepared and knowing that we did everything we could to, stay on, track with our financing and budgeting and all that for when this all is over. But yeah, no, still writing it out independently. I mean, for me, because also too, the other thing was a lot of people lost their deals with studios, like Justin Simeon, who is the creator of Dear White People. His company lost their deal. I don't remember who it was with, but they don't have a deal currently anymore with that network studio that they were with.
Oh, wow.
He's been talking heavily about that. And then some other creatives, especially Black creators who have different deals, lost them. And then some other ones, though, have gotten certain ones. So it's just been interesting to see what's happened. But I mean, for me, I advocate for staying for myself independently right now until it makes sense, because it just doesn't make sense right now. If I had something, we probably would have lost it too, because we're not that relevant compared to certain artists. But yeah, no, it's been interesting seeing that as well.
So let everybody know how to get in contact with you, whether it's an independent project, whether it's for music, whether it's for sports. Let them know how to reach out.
Yeah, so you can, well, I'm always on social media. So there's social media. You can DM me or DM Womxnography. I prefer people to DM Womxnography because I have it set up. If I don't follow you, it's don't go to general. I don't ever look at general. But there, and then I have info@womxnography.com is my email. And then, yeah, I mean, we'll definitely hit you back when we can, and talk or work together, whatever makes sense for us all.
Book the freelancers and the independents right now. The pockets is it's a little dusty. Okay, they're looking a little dusty. So book with the freelancers and the independents right now, please. Thank you so very much for being a part of this live. I genuinely appreciate it. I feel like you have just really tapped in and offering a lot of information overall. So I cannot wait to upload this to my YouTube page. But this has been really, really good. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me and asking me to be a part. Hopefully I'll see you soon.
Of course. Yes. I hope that I will see you soon on set or otherwise.
Yes.
Enjoy the rest of your day and have a good week.
Thank you. You too. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you guys for joining. We'll tell you who the next person up is towards the end of this week. So have a safe week.